Good evening. Right, so this has taken a while to do. I've been trying to do this for about 2 months. It's the latest Legends podcast, I think number 4, and I was going to do it live a couple of times, and then work life, family life got in the way. So I've decided to record it, but this has been an absolute labour of love. But firstly, we're going to run some titles. So here we go. And we're back. Before we get into it, I'd like to thank Saxby's Cider for sponsoring this event. It's a local cider company. I know them personally, and they're really good people. So I'm just going to pour one. I actually got this for free as well, which is extremely nice. Just a half, because it's quite strong. Right, so this episode of the Legends podcast, as you may or may not be aware, is about this guy, Mr. Arsene Wenger. I really don't know where to begin with this chap. It all started in 1989. He was at a game at Highbury, and he's gone out for half-time smoke, and he hasn't got a lighter, so he's asked a lady for a light, who happens to be best mates with David Dean's missus. He strikes up a conversation with her, David Dean's missus, and then with David Dean, and then they'll end up going for dinner. And 7 years later, David Dean is instrumental in Arsene Wenger becoming the new Arsenal manager. That's probably one for another episode entirely, though. But as the title suggests, to be classed as a legend in my eyes, it's about longevity, achievement, and conduct. So, firstly, we're going to jump into longevity. Now, bear in mind, this guy was Arsenal manager for 22 years. 22 fucking years. Just think about that. It's like 1996 to 2018, 22 seasons, 1,224 games, 3 marriages. I'd like to add the 3 marriages are mine, not his. That's probably something that can perhaps be discussed at another time as well. But when you look back at 1996, these are the sort of devices that we were using. That's what a telly looked like. That's the sort of thing we were listening to music on. Me personally, I was probably breakdancing on a bit of lino outside Argos in Hayes, and that was the sort of mobile phone that we were using. Now, to put into context what happens in 22 years, the Californian sequoia tree, which is literally the largest tree in the world, in 22 years, it will grow 176 feet. That's the equivalent of 7 two-story houses. 22 years. I don't really need to say much more about longevity than that. It's nearly a quarter of a century at one club, which for me is absolutely phenomenal. You know, you can't really say much more than that on that subject. Looking at his achievements, like I said, 1,224 games, 708 wins, 57.8% win ratio. Actually, before I go too far into this, headphones, it's pissing it down with rain, and I'm in my conservatory, and hopefully that's not coming through. And someone's having a mad party over the way as well. So hopefully all those sounds and my dog barking will not come through on this. Right, so in that time, 3 titles, 7 FA Cups, 8 finals, 11 semi-finals, 2 doubles, 20 consecutive seasons in the Champions League, 2 European finals. In the league, 828 games. Of those 828 games, he won 478. That's a 57.4% win ratio, averaging 1.88 goals per game, averaging conceding 0.97 goals a game. So that's roughly an average of a 2-1 win in every single game. Then you look at the signings. Now, I've picked signings basically to try to encapsulate the Invincibles and the spine of this team. Now, what I've done, I've tried to adjust it from 1996 to 2003 by using the Bank of England's inflation adjuster. Um, Obviously, it's not entirely accurate because the the price that a club will play for a player now is probably a little bit inflated on what it was. But when you look at this, you got Vieira in '96, Ljungberg '98, Henry '99, Perez in 2000, Gilberto, the great Gilberto in 2002, Jens Lehmann in 2003. Now, those six players cost a combined fee of 42.2 million. That's not even including the free transfer of Sol Campbell. And when you adjust that, I mean, you can pause this and look at the figures yourself. You know, if someone come up to you and said somebody like Robert Perez for 13.5 million today, Thierry Henry for 22.4 million today, Gilberto for just over 12 million today, and you know, with the inflation adjustment, that comes in at 64.8 million for those six players. And as it says at the bottom there, that's 8.6 million less than Juve paid for Dusan Vlahovic in the January transfer window. You know, Le Professeur, he was he had a degree in economics. He speaks 5 languages. This is the sort of guy we're talking about. Absolutely unbelievable. And in my lifetime, I've never seen anybody affect not just a club, but a footballing culture as much as he did. He was the first non-English manager to come in, and David Dean had to fight tooth and nail to get him in. And you just look at what he did, what he achieved, especially when you come up to 2003, 2004, which is within a decade of him first coming in. And that's what happened 2003, 2004. I'm not going to go into the Invincible season too much because I think there's another episode of this podcast to do purely on that alone. But that's what we did. Just absolutely phenomenal. Now, those are the achievements. Now, when we move on to conduct, I've not done any slides for this because this is largely based upon my opinions and my feelings. Excuse me, I'm sorry. A quick drink of the old Saxby cider. Not too much, because like I said, it's really, really strong. But it's fucking free. So there you have it. Now, when it comes down to conduct, loyalty was always a really, really big thing with Arsene Wenger, even going back to when he was at Monaco, where incidentally he gave debuts to then teenagers Thierry Henry and Emmanuel Petit, both of whom went on to win the World Cup in '98, and Petit scoring a goal in the final in the 3-1 win against Brazil. Probably should have mentioned that in the signings bit, but he was always very, very vociferous and very focused on the fact that he would never ever walk out on a contract, and he remained true to this throughout his entire career. When he was at Monaco, he was off the France job and he knocked it back, and then a year later, Monaco sacked him. In his time at Arsenal, he was approached just like 11 times in 15 years by, just listen to these clubs that reel him off. Man United, one of them, when Ferguson first said he was going to jack it in, and then he didn't. But Man United offered him the job. Real Madrid offered him the job 3 times in 5 years. Bayern Munich, Juve, Man City, PSG 3 times in 3 years. England twice, and not once did he ever walk out. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes here. in 2010. He said to his then wife, he would do 5 more years at Arsenal, and then he would go. 2016, he's still there. They got divorced. His relationship with his daughter suffered, and he's now trying to build that up. So it pains me, but when you come towards the end of his tenure, there were, I'm going to say it, AFTV. I hate AFTV with a fucking passion, purely because of how they went after him. And I get the business model that they set up. We're going to talk to angry fans right after the game when they're at their worst. And the stuff that came out with was absolutely disgusting. And I fucking hate AFTV for this alone. Like I said, I'm an emotional supporter. I get emotionally attached to anybody who is part of my football club, whether they're a player, manager, director who seems to have the best interests of the club at heart. And when I look at the things that they did, the demonstrations within the ground while the games were going on, it's like I said, this bloke is the greatest manager of my lifetime that I have seen. The only person I can think of who even holds a candle to him, and I couldn't possibly say one was better than the other, is Herbert Chapman. You know, he built Highbury. Arsene Wenger built the Emirates, and I find it absolutely disgusting that people went after him to such an extent. I accept that he probably stayed at least 5 seasons longer than he should have done. And he said himself in the Invincible documentary, if you haven't seen it, by the way, check it out. When David Dein went in 2007, which for me was the beginning of the end, that's another episode in itself. When there was the power struggle between Stan Kroenke and Alisher Usmanov, and David Dein was essentially sacked for his part, whichever part he played, depending on which story you read. That was the beginning of the end. And then when you look at when Robert Perez went to Villarreal, because we had this cast in stone structure that you would never offer more than a 1-year contract extension to anybody over the age of 30. And it all started going downhill. And then there was a building of the Emirates, and it went from a £400 million project to an £800 million project, and we had no money. But he still kept us in the Champions League for 20 years. He kept us in the top 4 between 2006 2016, when players were jumping ship left, right, and centre. And the way the guy conducted himself at all times was absolutely exemplary. I'll go to a few quotes that I've noted down here. It did strike me when the players were jumping. It was almost like they took his kindness as a form of weakness. And even though I mentioned earlier the signings that he made, you know, that's just a snapshot. Yeah, there were your Francis Jeffers and your Marouane Chamaks. But a lot of the players, they literally took the piss out of the bloke, as far as I can see. But let's go into the quotes. Sir Alex Ferguson talking about the invincible season. That achievement stands above everything else, and that's coming from the guy that won the treble. He also went on to say he kept us in Europe every year, and the supporters should be ashamed, alighting to the demonstrations and, you know, the AFTV stuff. Bob Wilson. This is Arsene Wenger, the greatest manager we've ever had. And a quote that I couldn't find, but I remember hearing him say, so I'm not sure if I've got this word for word. We will only truly appreciate what Arsene Wenger has done for this club after he's gone. And that's so true. You know, the achievement of just keep getting this club into the top 4 every season when we had literally no finances whatsoever, I think it's absolutely amazing. Patrick Vieira, he's father of our project. And one of the things I wanted to say, Nicholas Anelka is quoted as being Wenger's first signing. If you've watched the Invincible documentary, this is not strictly true. Between Bruce Rioch getting the flick and Arsene Wenger being approached about the job, Patrick Vieira was approached on Arsene Wenger's approval, and the only reason he joined us was because Arsene Wenger was going to be the new manager. That was the only reason he joined, and we got him for about 3.5 million, and the rest is history. Another one, 9 years later, we flogged him to Juve for about 9 million. So we even made a profit on this guy. Now, the last bit, this actually makes me really sad. Like I say, I'm an emotional supporter, and I form emotional attachments to people involved with my club, none more so than with Arsene Wenger. I literally cried the day of his last game against Burnley. It was so emotional for me. It was just fucking ridiculous. And I've got a couple of quotes from the man himself. My life on that front, football, is a miracle. Fear guides the restriction of our ambition. Be audacious, be ambitious. Your life can be wilder than your wildest dream. Of course, it is a love story. Of course, the end of a love story is always sad. This one really gets me. I regret I should have gone somewhere else, talking about when David Dean left, because he did suggest leaving at the same time. And he didn't, because he realised that nobody is bigger than the club. But going back, I regret I should have gone somewhere else. Now there is no special reason for me to go there, meaning Arsenal. I find that incredibly sad, really, really incredibly sad. And this guy, like I said earlier, he gave everything for our club, right? His marriage, his relationship with his daughter, which apparently he's still in the process of trying to patch up. Imagine giving that for a job where people watch you work, and then you have to put up with the stuff that you had to put up with at the end of his tenure. I find it incredibly sad. I know he's come back recently, and he's done some stuff with Mikel Arteta, and I hope that continues. But the way he was treated in the end, after what he achieved, leaves a really, really bitter taste in my mouth. That is about all I have to say on the subject. I would like to say, obviously he's never going to watch this, but if you do ever watch this, Monsieur Wenger, I raise my glass to you, sir. I don't honestly think we'll ever see anybody like you at this club again. Merci.